This Saturday, September 21st, our very own Elon Levy will be debating Al Jazeera's Mehdi Hassan in New York City. If you're in New York, you can buy a ticket and attend in person. If you're not attending in person, you'll be able to watch a live stream. Wherever you are in the world, you can host a watch party. If you want to host a watch party, you can fill out a form and we'll send you materials. All of the relevant information and links will be on our social media platforms today. Now, on with the daily briefing. Today is day 346 of the October 7th war. I just read a very disturbing report that Germany is holding up weapons exports to Israel. Now, that is very odd. Germany says it has a special relationship with the Jewish state and that it is committed to Israel's defense. In fact, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz came to Israel just after Hamas's October 7th massacre and pledged unconditional solidarity with Israel. But here's what really doesn't make any sense. Germany is selling weapons to Qatar. Qatar, which hosts Hamas leadership, which is completely committed to Israel's destruction. Qatar, which condemned Israel, not Hamas, on October 7th. Qatar fully supports Hamas. At a time when Israel is fighting a seven-front war against Iran and its proxies, Germany cannot claim to support Israel's right to defend itself and at the same time deny Israel the tools it needs for that defense. Israel's enemies are seeing the cracks in its ally support. We must stand united. Remember, Iran threatens not just Israel. Iran is a threat to humanity. According to reports in German media, including Bild and Profil magazines, no approval for arms exports to Israel have been granted since March. Germany's economics ministry, responsible for the exports, even said the federal government takes allegations of possible violations of international humanitarian law very seriously. Boy, isn't that generous of Germany. At the same time, Germany said they sold 100 million euros worth of weapons to Qatar. Not only does Qatar support Hamas terror, but they are serial human rights abusers who practice modern slavery. Germany needs to be reminded of what Chancellor Scholz said when he visited after October 7th. And I quote, "In difficult times, Germany has only one place, and that is by Israel's side. Germany supports the security of Israel and its citizens." Well, Germany, I think you should really hold up what you've been saying and in fact support Israel in its times of need and not one of the largest supporters of international terrorism in world history. Rocket fire from Lebanon continues this week. This morning, sirens sounded in border towns warning of incoming rockets. A few days ago, a huge barrage was fired at the city of Safat. It's amazing what Hezbollah gets away with in international diplomacy. I've discovered a trick that Hezbollah is playing on the entire world, including Secretary of State Blinken. It's brilliant. Here's how the trick works. Hezbollah started the trick on October 8th. That was the day that Hezbollah in Lebanon joined the war that Hamas started the day before on October 7th. Almost every day since, Hezbollah has been attacking Israelis with rockets, anti-tank missiles, and suicide drones. More than 60,000 Israelis have fled their homes near the border with Lebanon because they faced immediate danger. But this is where the trick comes in. The trick is that Hezbollah says it doesn't want war. The number 2 Hezbollah warlord, Naim Qassam, said, "We have no intention of going to war, as we consider that this would not be useful." Hezbollah's trick, surprisingly, is working. Back in June, Secretary of State Blinken said, "It's safe to say that actually no one is looking to start a war." Friends, Antony, don't fall for Hezbollah's tricks. War is already here. Hezbollah is already waging that war. Now, Hezbollah must back off of Israel. Otherwise, Israel will be forced to push it away. One final item today. The Associated Press this week inadvertently reported the truth about the serious threat of terrorism that Israel faces in Judea and Samaria, and the role that the media often plays in covering it up. The AP headline was, "Underage Under Fire. As war rages in Gaza, Israel's crackdown on West Bank insurgency is killing Palestinian youths." Well, this sounds awful. The story was supposedly about how Israel is killing Palestinian teenagers, which is not true. But when you look closer, you see something very interesting. The AP used a photo montage of teenagers, but they missed that some of the older teenagers in that picture were holding weapons. In other words, the teenagers were proud terrorists. Hamas has created a tragic reality, not just in Gaza, but also in Judea and Samaria. Minors, teenagers, 16 and 17-year-olds are brainwashed, inculcated with hate, and then sent out to murder. The media regularly pretends that these teens are innocent victims of Israel. This time, the media let the truth slip out. Israel's been fighting terrorism in Palestinian-run towns in the West Bank, the Judean and Samaritan hills surrounding Jerusalem and overlooking Tel Aviv since Hamas' October 7th massacre. The threat is real. Multiple Israelis have been murdered in these attacks. Suicide bombings have been narrowly avoided. The tragic abuse of children is enabled by a radicalized society. The child abuse is also enabled by Western governments and news media who are all too willing to turn a blind eye. That's another reason why the war in Gaza must end with the 3 Ds: destroy Hamas, demilitarize Gaza, de-radicalize Gazan society. Now is the time to act. We cannot afford to wait for Judea and Samaria to become another Gaza. Let's take some questions now from our audience watching live on social media.
Thank you, Doron. Our first question today is about the potential of a wider war in Lebanon. If Israeli ground forces enter Lebanon, what will that look like, both in Lebanon, and what will the Israeli home front be dealing with if the situation escalates?
Well, it's not going to look good for Hezbollah. Israeli forces have been trained to fight Hezbollah, which is the world's largest terror army. Hezbollah has killed more Americans pre-9/11 than any other terrorist organization in the world, more than 250 in a single attack in Lebanon, not to mention the dozens and dozens of Israelis that have been killed by Hezbollah rocket fire. Israel has been saying since October 7th, Hezbollah has been in violation of international law. In 2006, Israel fought a war with Hezbollah, known as the Second Lebanon War, which of course was provoked by Hezbollah that crossed into Israeli territory, murdered and kidnapped a number of people. As a result of that war, there was a ceasefire agreement in which the United Nations in 1701, which is a United Nations Security Council resolution, declared that Hezbollah has to withdraw behind the Litani River, which is around 18 kilometers, around 12 miles away from Israel's border. They're not allowed to cross the Litani, they're not allowed to be armed, and they're not allowed to fire rockets at Israel. Since 2008, Hezbollah crossed the Litani River, they are armed, and they have been shooting rockets and missiles at Israel. They are completely in violation of 1701. It is a matter of Israeli national defense that Hezbollah be removed and withdraw beyond the Litani River and immediately stop targeting Israeli citizens. If they do not, the Israeli military is ready and completely capable of defeating Hezbollah and pushing them back by force. Again, we have been saying to the entire world, Hezbollah is the belligerent actor. They are a world sponsor of state terrorism. They are a pawn of Iran. It is now time for the world to take a step forward and force Hezbollah to withdraw before a larger war with them begins.
Thank you, Doron. Just yesterday, we were dealing with the effects of a ballistic missile that was fired from Yemen towards central Israel. Have you seen any follow-up reporting on this, and what can we expect in the future from the Houthis in Yemen?
This is still really just a shock when we talk about ballistic missiles. If we could just rewind, going back 1 year from now, in September of 2023, if anyone would have said a ballistic missile is being fired towards Israeli territory, towards American territory, France or Spain, how would you react? A ballistic missile is one that goes into the atmosphere, it comes back down at incredibly high speeds, up to 20,000 kilometers. It flies 5 times Mach speed. This is what Israel's facing, and each missile weighs around 13 cars of weight. If that explodes, it can wipe out a major part of an entire city. The missile itself was intercepted over Israeli territory. Apparently, pieces of that missile fell inside Israeli territory. There's an ongoing investigation to how that breached into Israeli atmosphere before it was destroyed. But the real point is the intent. The Houthis have become a major international terrorist actor. Israel's located a few hundred kilometers away, and we've been targeted and very lucky. However, they are not only targeting Israel, they are targeting ships of the Western world. They are carrying out terrorist attacks on international shipping. Not only are they killing people, they are driving up prices for every single person that's watching this show right now because they're disrupting international shipping, which is a casus belli for war, according to the rules of international war. So while Israel is going to investigate how this entered our atmosphere, the bigger question is, how is the world allowing a new terrorist regime to pop up from under the ground without acting to stop them? Again, this is not just Israel's problem. We may be the first target, but the second target is clearly the West. So this is an international opportunity to stop this terror organization before they get off the ground.
Our next question concerns the Abraham Accords. Israelis are marking 4 years since the signing of the Abraham Accords. Our next question concerns the Abraham Accords. It's been 4 years since the signing of the Abraham Accords. How are Israelis looking back on this event 4 years ago, and where do we stand today with the countries who have signed the Abraham Accords?
The Abraham Accords is a symbol for what the state of Israel is looking to do, which is to make peace with our neighbor. The Abraham Accords, which are made with a number of Israel's allies in the region, the Emirates, Morocco, and other countries, is an accord that, despite the growth of Iran, despite the fact that Iran has been attacking Israel, has held strong. The members of the Abraham Accords agreement have stood by Israel's side in the face of terrorism, and this is incredibly significant. Israel has always said that we are looking for allies in the region. We are not a belligerent actor, and the Abraham Accord should stand as the model for what Israel calls on the rest of the Arab world and the Muslim world to do, which is to create, let's take a step forward towards peace together, productivity, and not one towards war, which is what Iran is trying to do.
This is a question from our Instagram Live from Adam Zucker, who's asking, is the Israeli government working to establish or ramp up their own weapons manufacturing? Since you mentioned they can't rely on Western countries such as Germany today. We've also discussed England. Where does Israel's own domestic production stand, and what are people talking about in Israel in this regard?
That's an absolutely phenomenal question, and this is, I would say, a key topic and a takeaway of this war. It is clear that this war has brought to the fore Israel's reliance on other global players, particularly the United States, but many global players, in order to procure the weapons, many of which were originally designed and developed in Israel in order to defend ourselves. And this is something right now that the government has created a committee, which is a military committee, which is being led by the Minister of Defense, to talk about what the future next 10 years of Israel's armaments are going to look like. One of the key pieces is how Israel can become more of an independent actor. On the ground already today, the existing Israeli facilities have ramped up their production 4 or 5 times. However, to create an industry that would make Israel independent is a process that needs to begin today, because it will take years for this to come to fruition. This is a very important point. I think it's one of the most important takeaways from this war. You're spot on with your question. Let's hope that Israel develops this technology as quickly as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining us today. Every day we are on at 3 p.m. Israel time, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are here to bring you not only the news, but news insights into how Israel is defending itself on 7 different fronts, how we are being successful, so that you can take these messages and join Israel in allowing the truth to cut through the disinformation, which is part of the plans of Hamas and all the terrorists to try to defeat Israel abroad. You're a member of our team. We thank you. Continue to tune in. to the Israel Citizens Unit.